All right, I guess we should get started then. I think, Pavel, looks like you have the first item on the agenda to talk about the block cloning status.
Correct. So I was able to finish the last missing bit with Zil. So the problem was how to properly support block cloning across multiple data sets, because the Zil is replayed when the problem was what happens if we have some Zil log entries that are trying to clone from one file system to another file system, but then when we import the pool, before we mount the destination file system, we destroy the source file system, so the block pointers are no longer valid. And Matt suggested to use Zil claim, so this is what I did. So there are two situations. First, when we import the pool, we will use Zil claim to just bump the references in BRT for all the block pointers. So then when we replay the Zil, we only add the block pointers to the file. We don't bump references anymore. And the other situation is when we do Zil claim, we bump the references, but we never mount the destination file system. We destroy the destination file system before mounting it, so before replaying the Zil. So then we have to decrement all the references. Alexander also suggested another issue. It's not 100% I think addressed yet, maybe, but with ZVol. Currently we don't support block cloning for ZVols, but let's say we start support block cloning in the future, and then when we have some Zil entries for a ZVol, and we try to import this pool on some older ZFS version, then on pool import we will bump the references during Zil claim, but then we won't be able to replay the Zil. So we will just return an error, and this would lead to leaking BRT references. So my first attempt was to deny pool import, but Alexander suggested to do something else to try to free the entries. So my understanding was that he suggested to just free the entries and return success. And so during Zil replay, I would just decrease references that were increased during Zil claim. But apparently, if I understand correctly, there can be another or maybe previous Zil entry that fails. And I haven't checked that, but from my understanding is that the Zil replay will stop. So we will never get to replaying block cloning entries. And we will end up in those leaking references anyway, if my understanding is correct. But other than that, I found another one more issue. which I think
just
is
first, before you move on that previous one, if we do a feature flag for BRT anyway, then you're not going to be able to import a pool that doesn't support BRT, right?
Yes, but we would need a second feature flag for zivals.
Right, in the future.
Yeah. What I did initially was to prevent pool from importing, but this is basically like a second feature flag.
Pavel, if I may, as I've written there on a PR, we some time ago, a few months ago, when implementing for Linux support for what's that, nullfs mount, not nullfs, but equivalent. We added few log entries which are implemented only for Linux, but not for FreeBSD. And at that point, we decided that we are not going to diverge to implementation, keeping them compatible, but allowing like non-existing, not implemented log entries for some operating system, in this case, FreeBSD. So log replay will just go up to the first unknown record and then stop. So that was particularly example which I was thinking in contexts of BRT. So it may happen that pool that was using both BRT and whatever that feature was.
I think it's the rename and exchange or whatever.
Yeah, something like that.
Yes, I understand that if we have two entries,
it will leak. Yeah, practically it will stop replaying earlier, even if so pool is not corrupted, but it just officially kind of supported now situation. So I was thinking that in that situation, we should call free for every log entry after that, up to the point to which we claimed. So I was trying to look on the code, trying to figure out whether maybe it's already supported, because we do call like zeal destroy or something like that after replay attempt. But I haven't actually found that zeal destroy would care about exact failure position. So is it's broken or it's not working or it was never designed to work? At least that's what my appearance after like half an hour there yesterday. I had no chance to look deeper. But if somebody knows that area better, could take a look, it would be good to understand. As I understand, a proper solution would be just to replay normally as much as we can. Then we get first error. And for every record after that, we must call free to free all the effects we'll find. It can include TX write data blocks. It includes BRTs, and who knows what it may include in future. I think if we would pass additional arguments to zeal parse, I think function that actually traverses through them, we could just make it, okay, after first error, don't return, but instead of call a normal process function, just call free function and continue, something like that. But
doesn't that risk missing log entries that are valid, like a normal rename after one of these?
But after we got first error, we cannot guarantee that following records are not conflicting, not applying.
Right, because if you're renaming a file that you just did an incompatible operation on, then it's not even going to be there to operate on.
Yeah, or it may be different file, or who knows what happened. Yeah. It's better to get last known valid state, and just, I think we are printing something in logs that, hey, we can't replay. So the user knows that something bad happened.
Yeah.
It's better if possible, but yeah, it needs investigation what to do with free after that. Because as I've told, log destroy is called, zeal destroy is called after that, but what exactly it destroys, it's slightly got out of my understanding.
So I was actually surprised that this is how we handle this case, because I was like I assume initially that if we found some entries that we are not able to replay, we won't mount the file system. We will deny mounting so we don't lose any data. Because currently, when we stop on error, we still continue with the mount, right? So there is no way for the user to somehow stop this from happening. if I import the pool, if I take the pool from Linux and I import it in FreeBSD, I just lose those entries. Well, we log this, but the data is gone. So I'm not sure if I like this approach, but also, as you mentioned, the same problem is with writes. That writes also claim some blocks during pool import, during ZIL claim, and then we can stop before replying writes. And there is another issue. Well, I didn't verify. I'm not sure if I have a way to verify that, but during ZIL claim, because normally when we reply, first thing we do, we check if we have.
No.
I think Pavel froze there. Oh, there he's back.
Sorry?
Yeah, you froze for a second there.
Okay, not sure when I stopped. So you heard everything more or less what I said, or?
Up to when you're talking about what to do when replaying. About 10 seconds worth, basically.
Okay, so yeah, so the problem is, as Alexander mentioned, with replying writes as well. We can stop before replying write, but basically, I'm not sure if I agree that this is the best approach to just mount file system and drop all the entries altogether.
Yeah, I feel like, well, does this happen during mount or during import, or does it happen during mount?
Mount.
Okay, so it's already too late to deny importing anyway. Well,
there's no actual way to recover after that. Okay, if mount failed, what to do now? Do we want to lose 2 seconds of data, or we want to down production for a few days until I don't know till what happened. At best, somebody
until you put it back on the OS that it supports the feature or something.
Well,
so
if there will be a way to like forcibly mount, just to give a user, like allow the user to make the decision, but of course,
yeah, like
it was considered it's so a rare situation that not many people doing dual boot. It's likely some disk moved from one system to another. It's not a daily routine.
Yeah, I kind of agree with Pavel that throwing the data away without giving the user a chance to decide is maybe problematic, but I think it's such a rare case that it probably doesn't matter. Like, yeah, like you're choosing to do this if you're moving a disk from Linux to FreeBSD after an unsafe shutdown. Is the only time this could happen, right? In general.
Yeah, but my understanding was that, of course, most of the time you want to move clean pool, but maybe you have your system is broken and you try to you cannot import the pool, or you have some issue on the Linux system, so you try to import this on FreeBSD as a recovery option to diagnose what's happening, and then you lose those entries. But
I hate to add another tunable, but maybe that's the option. It's just a module parameter that says it's okay to throw stuff away. And so when you try to mount, you get the error, and the log says set this to 1 if you want to throw the data away and mount it anyway.
Like
maybe even making that the default, like giving people the option to opt out, but that doesn't seem like that would ever happen. So I don't know if it makes sense.
Look, I don't have objection against that. Whatever, it could be tunable. As I thought, I would probably prefer from the keeping production point, have it allowed by default. If somebody didn't want disabled, okay, disable, but it doesn't solve all the problems. The errors may happen during the log, during import, so that are valid errors. Who knows what happened? And we should try to be clean and correct in that case. So a problem doesn't go anywhere. It's probably not directly related to BRT or not related at all. but some
can we
closer look on ZIL replay from that perspective.
Yeah, like when we're doing the ZIL replay, can we use a different error code for this entry is corrupt or otherwise broken from it's just literally your OS doesn't support this entry and so it's not an error so much as an incompatibility, and what we default to doing about it is different in that case. Like if it seems like your ZIL is corrupt, I guess even then you still kind of would prefer to get back into production than to sit there and ask for help, right?
But I'm not sure. I'm not sure when exactly we declare the entry as replayed. If I will call ZIL parse again on error, would I walk through the old entries as well? Let's say I succeeded with few, but I failed on like fifth one. And then when I call ZIL parse again, will it start from the beginning or will it start from the last not replayed entry? Because then we could just call ZIL parse again and free the remaining entries.
Looking on the parse code itself, it considers only a claim position. I haven't seen there any start position. I was thinking maybe it could start from arbitrary block if we free some earlier blocks, but I haven't found there any pointer to first record. And obviously first record, like error can be not on the first record, can be within a block.
Mm-hmm.
That I was thinking passing additional function directly to ZIL parse could be easier, but yeah, other ways are possible too.
Mm-hmm. Another option maybe worth considering is during ZIL claim is to verify if this block cloning entry is related to file system or ZVol, and don't claim and just free the entries that are related to ZVols. But then again, I may import the pool.
Replay might actually happen on different system version even. So it's probably not very good either. Unless we completely stop claim, a report error, don't claim anything after. So that way we would stay consistent. But then we'll lose some data again.
Yeah, and somebody could like deliberately not mount some file systems to not lose those entries. So we don't want him to lose the entries on import.
Yeah, this is a tough one, trying to decide between, correctness and definitely not throwing away any of the data, but also, yeah, more often than not, people probably would rather the system work than not. When something does go slightly sideways.
Yeah, especially in the block cloning case, in practice, if you lose those entries, you still have the source data, so you didn't lose the data actually. You can just mount and clone again. So
it probably matters only in case of some transactional database when you confirm with somebody that transaction is done, but then you roll back a couple seconds back, and you already confirm it's done. So then there is a problem. So it doesn't help here, but if your system will be down for an arc-known period of time, is it better?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe to somebody, but probably not everybody.
Yeah, so that's where the idea of a tunable or a pool property like fail mode or something to deal with what do you do when the ZIL doesn't want to cooperate. Is like, am I okay with going ahead anyway, or do I want to stop and hope somebody can solve it for me? Although I don't know in reality how often there'll be anything they can do about it other than decide to throw the data away, right?
Yeah, the only practical solution is to switch back to original operating system to complete there.
Right, in the case of the incompatible ones like rename exchange.
Well, if it's corrupted, then it's corrupted.
If it didn't, yeah.
That's microsurgery, nobody wants it probably.
Yeah. So in that case, it does seem like throwing it away is the practical thing to do. And maybe there's a module parameter to allow you to opt out of that in case you are running that database. But like you said, not much you're going to be able to do about it anyway, other than.
But I also wonder, like, if there are not some ZIL entries that that we could try to always replay, like writes or block cloning, because they operate. Like in case of rename, we operate on names, so there might be like if we skip the operation you, Alex, mentioned, it's related to rename, right? I'm not sure what exactly.
Yeah, there's two different rename ones that are new. It's where you atomically swap two file names, and another one where you rename a file and leave a whiteout behind in the old file name.
Okay. Yeah, so in this case, yeah, it may...
As soon as you see one of those, you'd have to like set a flag to skip every other ZIL entry that references something by name in that data set. Because you can't know that any of the operations completed properly and that the file names actually mean what they're supposed to mean.
Theoretically, it gives some more data, but it then gives inconsistent state. That
you
maybe worse.
Yeah, you replayed some of the changes, but not all of them. Instead of you replayed up to a point where it was good, and then everything after it was gone. I think I agree with Alexander here that doing a smattering of the later transactions would be worse. It would lose less data, but consistency-wise, you would have much less of an idea of what data was okay and which wasn't. Then just we replayed up to a certain time and then we had to stop. I think it's less likely to break something in an application. But definitely open to hear other opinions on that.
Well, I wonder, like, practical case that the application would rename the file and then write some data, and for some reason assume that the data should be there only when rename succeeded. Yeah, but yeah,
I think like a lot of stuff in databases does that, right? Like you'd write the update to a file with a different name and then rename it into place over top of some other existing file to atomically make it visible.
Yes, but this order is fine, right? The other one, the opposite order, is not okay. But probably not for the complication.
Yeah.
Anyway, I will take a look at this. Yeah, see if I can come up with some ways to not leak the entries. There is one more issue I found, I think unrelated, with byte swapping the entries, the headers of ZIL entries on ZIL claim. Because from what I see on writes, we do access the headers, but I don't think we do byte swaps as we do during replay. So I'm not sure if anyone ever tried to import a pool from different architecture with some writes in ZIL, and if that worked. I also don't really have a way to test that.
Maybe we can put a ping about that in the OpenZFS Slack. I think Rich, or Kalani has some PowerPC machines or something that are big endian and tests that kind of stuff occasionally. And maybe we can describe the situation and have him check it out and make sure it works as we expect. Or determine for sure that it doesn't and that we should do something about it. Because I know we ran into some issues with the Z standard stuff at one point because of the byte order stuff. And he found that.
Okay, I'll try to find someone who can try this.
Paul, did you want to talk about the shared slog stuff?
Yeah. So I posted a PR for this recently. It's a project that I've been working on for a few months, and I figured I would sort of explain what it was and what the context was and give people a chance to ask questions about it. So the idea of the shared slog is basically that if you have multiple ZFS storage pools on a single engine, and you kind of care about the performance of all of them, and you care specifically about sync write performance, you might want to have a slog for each of those pools. The problem with this is that if you have sort of multiple pools doing this and you have the workload varying between them and you don't know exactly how much workload each of them is going to get, divvying up your slog among all of them is effectively going to reduce your performance because now you have, only one device per pool or only part of a device per pool on the system. And so you're like effectively getting reduced performance and reduced storage on each of these pools. Also, if your pools are moving around, like if the main storage for the pool is on like a SAN, and then the slog devices are like locally attached to SSDs, you now have a situation where you want to move these two things independently, but adding new pools to the system, you might already be out of SSDs. So now you need to remove a log from a pool and like partition it more and make all these changes that are sort of obnoxious to deal with. And one of the reasons that ZFS was created in the first place was to solve some of these problems by integrating the volume manager with the file system. So the idea was to sort of integrate the volume manager with the slog concept as well. So the idea is that you can create a pool and use that as effectively the slog device. When you create a pool, you can say, please use my shared slog pool as the slog device, and then all of the slog writes will go directly to this other pool rather than be stored locally on the normal data pool. And so there's a bunch of advantages to this. The complications are that like you now effectively have these two pools that are sort of interlinked with each other. And so the PR has a bunch of changes to like make sure that you only can import one when these like client pools when the shared log pool is already imported. There's checks in import and stuff like that, and then also you can import discarding logs, which is existing functionality if you want to get off of the shared log pool. And there's some new data structures and stuff in the shared log pool to sort of track all the different client pools and what all of their ZILs are like. So that we don't have to like do any weird space accounting. We can do ZIL replay in a similar way that we used to, but using these new data structures instead of iterating over all the file systems on import. So that's sort of the like 10,000 feet view. I can drill into more details, or if people have questions, I can answer those as well.
No questions off the top of my head. I guess it sounds a bit like or similar approach to the shared L2ARC stuff we talked about at the Dev Summit that Christian was doing, where there's a separate pool that then a bunch of other pools can rely on.
Yeah. I don't remember all the details of that discussion, but at least at the high level, it's pretty similar. The way that this works is that it's really very direct. The client pools like do their work in the shared slog pool because they literally just get like when you do a Metaslab alloc inside the ZIL code where it goes and tries to allocate from the slog, It instead just like goes to the normal class of the target pool and does the allocation there. So it hybridizes at like a very direct level with the allocation code. And then we avoid storing block pointers in like the shared slogs block pointers in the client pool, because the VDEV IDs like might match up, and it would be like this wouldn't be a meaningful block pointer in the client pool. So what we do is we like the ZIL header effectively just always has a hole in it. And if that's the case and you're using a shared slog, you go ask the shared slog, like, what do you have listed as the header of my ZIL? And then it can go through and do replay in the same way that it normally would after sort of fetching the shared slogs block pointer. And so the ZIL knows that it's supposed to go do these IOs to this other pool rather than its own pool. So it really involves very minimal changes at the ZIL layer, because it all happens at like the ZIO layer and the allocation layer by directly talking to the other pool. If anybody else has any other questions, great. Otherwise, you can reach out to me on Slack or on IRC or comment on the pull request. I would be happy to have pull reviews. I have a couple people at Delphix lined up to take a look at it, but I would be very happy to have people from the community take a look. And especially if people have ideas about use cases and stuff like that, where they might have feelings about particular implementation details. It would be great to have more eyes on it.
I put a link to the pull request in the show or the meeting notes.
Thank you.
That reminded me, I had a slightly random question. Is there a reason we don't support mirrored L2 arc other than the fact that it kind of seems like a silly idea?
And why would you do it?
The particular customer we're talking with just depends on the performance boost they get from their L2 arc. Their working set is such a size that it's too big for RAM, but does actually fit with arc plus L2 arc. And so when the SSD dies and they fall back to reading from hard drives, their performance tanks really badly. So they were looking at doing a mirror, and we noticed that the zpool command just will not let you construct a pool with a mirrored L2 arc. And I wondered if that's actually because we don't really track stuff in the right way to be able to update one of the mirrors if it got out of sync, like the DTL, or just attaching a mirror. If you try to zpool attach, how is ZFS going to figure out what should have been on the new SSD? Because we don't allocate the same way, right?
It would probably require completely different rebuild, completely different everything, because none of data stored in a pool. Plus, my first thing was actually from user perspective. I think there are much higher chance of people using mirror for no reason rather than have a good reason for it.
Yeah. But yeah, I think you're right that the rebuild code, even just scrub, would then have to do something about it, and rebuild during attach and so on means it would just be a lot of extra work, and I agree that it doesn't really seem that useful. I was just looking at it, it looked like it could have just been a bug in the way we parse the zpool create string. We're basically, if we see the keyword mirror and it's not directly following one of these keywords, then we think it's the next VDEV. And so the error you get is that you can't create an L2 arc with 0 devices in it. If you do, the log, or sorry, cache mirror thing, it thinks mirror is the next VDEV, and it wouldn't even try. And I wondered if that was just a fluke that it didn't work. But you're right that I think the rebuild code would have to be completely different, and it's not there. And it makes sense that it's just not something you're supposed to be able to do.
At some point, I got surprised that we don't allow special VDEVs to be RAID Z. And that, I believe, purely administrative limitation, but we do have it in code.
Well, other than the fact that your special VDEVs, I guess most of the metadata isn't actually small blocks, is it? The indirect blocks are fairly large and maybe would make sense as RAID Z. But I think part of it was when they did it for DRAID, it was the small underscore blocks, and small blocks on RAID Z would be silly. But
there is no technical reason why it can't be.
Right.
But it's not allowed, only mirrors.
Yeah. I might actually have enough impetus to go fix that one. We got a couple minutes. Pavel, did you want to talk maybe a bit about the IO rate limiting and see if anybody has opinions or ideas about the properties problem?
Yes. We are looking for like a clean way to represent the following situation. So we have multiple properties related to rate limiting. So we can rate limit the bandwidth, the reading bandwidth, we can or throughput, we can limit the write throughput, and we can limit the total throughput. And also we can limit the number of read operations, write operations, and total operations. So we have 6 properties, but the problem is that they all overlap. So when we configure one property on dataset, we actually have to create the structure that has all of them configured. So when we just limit the, let's say, read throughput, we actually create a structure that have the other properties unlimited. And we were wondering how to best, what would be the best way to make this configurable and like user-friendly. Because if those are separate properties, then it might be confusing that setting one actually sets them all. Or if this is one property, then it may be some weird string where we have like shared shared NFS property, where we basically put all the options into one property as a string. So I have ideas along the lines where we have a single property, but we can use at to set those sub-properties. Let's say that we have rate limit at read throughput. And this would set the only read throughput for the rate limit property or something like this. So I don't know if anyone has any ideas how to do this so it's like more pretty intuitive to set, and also I don't know, looks elegant, I guess.
Do you think like 6 properties are too much, too noisy, or something?
Well, the main problem is that if you set the read quota on a certain data set, then that would, if before it was inheriting and now it wouldn't be, if you set only one of them, then we've set all the other ones to unlimited, and suddenly the total bandwidth quota you set higher up the tree doesn't apply anymore.
Why should other be set to unlimited? Like, can't be, they remain unset? Like if it's different.
So the data structure that's tracking the limits gets created for the data set where you set the properties, and so we kind of need you to set them all or none rather than setting only some of them.
Yeah, so it's it would be a bit hard to explain it quickly, but because the properties overlap, I cannot let's say if I have to pause some threads because they are over rate limit, at each level I have different queues, so I don't have to go around and look through entire pool where the threads should wait and where they should wait longer. Let's say you have on one data set, you have read throughput configured, and somewhere below you have read operations configured. And then when you try to read something, then we would need to decide where to check the rate limit and which wait queue to use for this thread, etc. So it's getting very complicated. So basically, the way I implemented that is that it is like a whole package. So we check if you configure the rate limit on this data set, it applies to this data set and all its children until it finds another rate limit configured. But basically, you should think about that this is like rate limiting point, and at this point you decide what to rate limit and how.
Yeah, kind of this same kind of concept as like the encryption root, right? Like everything under it inherits from it, but you can't, if you change something on a child such that it has different encryption, then it becomes its own new encryption root.
Yeah, I got that point from it. Like, it would be separate properties that would inherit separately, and you made up that you need to take read limit from one point, write limit from another, and combine them.
Yeah.
And not just create new queue with those parameters, but combine queues. I agree that it's difficult, but it would be nice from a user point. Okay, so put limit this here, applies to all, apply limit that's there, apply to all. But yeah, maybe difficult to implement. I agree.
Yes, that was our starting point. It would be nice, but yeah, it's getting really messy, especially if like one data set and have multiple children. So you have one rate limit here. The children have different rate limits, but also you have to like take all of this into account. So then also like
in sum, all the children shouldn't be able to violate the parents, and it gets crazy and recursive.
Yeah, and the locking will get really messy. The lock contention would be, I think, pretty high if we try to like always currently
iterate all the way back. Like I think Alexander, you brought that up when we talked about this initially a couple of months ago. Of it's your biggest complaint about the quota system is that you recurse all the way up to the parent every time.
Yeah.
And yeah, so we're at least the first implementation of this, we're trying to avoid all that. But yeah, is one compound property does feel pretty kind of nasty for the user, but maybe Pavel's idea of having the @based, you can atomically switch one of the 6 numbers by setting just that one property and we'll do it for you. But, during replication or whatever, it can copy the whole property as one string.
So you mean like there will be no combination of different data sets? It will be just completely overwrite, even so you specified only one?
Yes.
That way, by using single property, you are limiting users' expectation.
Yes, limiting users' expectation, and means that we don't ever have to recurse and look at anything else, right? As soon as we recurse up until we find a rate limit structure, and then we can stop. We don't have to go and see, oh, is there a bigger limit we also have to respect from a parent higher up the tree?
Yeah, it makes sense. I just haven't got what, Pavel, do you mean with @signs? I was thinking you mean like in a property name, like if we have features.
Yeah.
But then it would be collide from the old idea of limiting user expectations. Then it would mean there could be multiple properties like that. And then inheritance would return back to us to original point. I'm not sure what the @signs.
So I don't have good idea. That's why we are discussing it. But the initial idea was that you have one single rate limit property, let's say, right? And when you display this property, when you do ZFS get rate limit, we will show you maybe, I don't know, but we could show you
all 6 values, basically.
All 6 values, yes, in this property. But to to make it easier to set them up individually, we could use @, rate limit at, I don't know, read throughput, and you only configure read throughput. So you don't have to provide the entire string.
So they wouldn't be actual properties. It would just be a way to access the middle of the compound property.
Oh yeah, but if you are showing them to user as separate lines.
No, we would show them as one property. So the part wouldn't actually exist. It would just be like syntax sugar for, I want to change the middle number of the compound property.
You could, like you could still set the whole property, right?
Yeah.
But at would be at value side, not at key side, like with features. So there would be like property, let's say equal, and read at 5 megabytes, write at 5 megabytes. Because if you move add to the left, it will be several lines, and then it returns to the point of several properties and confusing users on inheritance.
Well, I think Pavel's idea was you'd never be able to get the properties that way. Although maybe you'd want to be able to.
You could get maybe like individually as well, but only if you explicitly ask for.
Yeah, they wouldn't show up they wouldn't be registered as properties in like zcommon or whatever. It would just be a syntax sugar for meaning the nth delimited value of the one big property.
Because let's say you have a few of those set, right? And you only want to change one.
In particular, you want to atomically change one and avoid, read, modify, write, and there being a race in there or something, and so on.
But again, it's
not the best idea.
I'm convinced, yeah.
But it's what we came up with so far.
From perspective of setting separate sub-property versus replacing completely, maybe that syntax could have sense only for write part, not for read.
Yeah.
But it would be first of its kind, that maybe conflicting with like features where it's different property with add signs as part of property name, whether it's real or fake, whatever. I haven't looked whether it's handled in the code.
Yeah, there's just a is feature or something macro that we deal with is to look for the @ sign. And maybe we could do something silly like use the hash sign instead to make it not conflict, but we don't want to use up all the letters either. I guess $signs are for some of the hidden properties. I don't think we want to go there though. But definitely open if anybody has a better idea of how you'd want to manage this kind of compound property. Because I kind of agreed, even just Alexander's first point of like 6 new properties is kind of a lot already, and looks a bit crowded, but if we can make it work, it'd be okay.
Would they be properly inherited and properly working, then I would say it's much cleaner.
Yeah.
But if it won't work that way, that's
triple the scope of this project.
Well, we could probably inherit the value, but it still might be confusing if it's inherited.
But it doesn't respect upward limits, right?
Yeah, it's not shared.
Yeah, it doesn't work the same way as quotas.
So maybe it's this is better solution than just we should document it properly, but
yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, so that we just have to use the _CB ones to make sure we update the limits in the data structure at the right place when we re-inherit.
Yeah, but when we set, I think, we can, well, the code that set inherited property, they already walk the tree, right? It already walks the tree. So.
Right, but it only ever goes up right now, and we'd have to use the callback one to know if where we were inheriting it from above us changes to trigger us to go from the actual point where it's applied and walk back up to update the values, but it'd be easy enough. Yeah, I guess it would just be about documenting the fact that these are not They don't apply recursively like quotas do.
And then yeah, maybe this will work, but
well, we'll give it a try and report back, I guess.
Yeah.
All right. We're about at time. Does anybody else have anything before we wrap up? No? Okay. Do we know when the next meeting will be? So the next meeting will be March 28th at the usual time, the 1 p.m. Pacific. All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, guys.
Take care.
Have a good week. See you next month.